The AWARE project's aim is to balance the public conversation about psychedelics, spread accurate information, and give a new face to psychedelia. We feel that this change will occur through connection and relationship, one individual at a time. We are calling on everyone whose lives have been improved through the mindful use of psychedelics to educate themselves and become ambassadors for the psychedelic experience. Show those around you that people who use psychedelics mindfully cross all social, racial, economic, and political boundaries.
So I have a pleasure of introducing our featured artist tonight. She's a ceremonial artist, a healer, healing facilitator, and a community leader, Shakti.
Good evening, everyone. So honored to share this night with you, and just offering so much gratitude to be here. Thank you, Malaya, and just really thankful to gather in this sacred space here at this church. Really feeling this divine energy fill this space, and so I'm going to be sharing two songs tonight. The first song that I'm going to share is called Tonantzin. And Tonantzin is the Aztec name for the mother goddess, for the divine mother, also known as Lady Guadalupe, or Mother Mary, or the Divine Mother. And I learned this song, Tonantzin, from my dear sister Marisa, who is here. And she learned this song at the Moon Dance. And the Moon Dance is this powerful 4-night, 5-day ceremony where a gathering of women dance all over the world and really just tune into this really powerful warrior spirit of prayer and ceremony. So I'm really honored to share this first song, Tonantzin. And it's really an invocation song. And so as I sing this song with my medicine drum, it's an invocation. It's a really calling in and receiving and invoking the spirits of Mother Earth. And so both songs that I'm going to be sharing tonight are really in honor of Mother Earth. And so just as I share these songs, you're welcome to just receive. And if you want to sing along with me, you're welcome to as well. So thank you. Tonantzin away, Tonantzin, 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 Tonantzin away. Tonantzin away, and just really calling her fully into this space tonight. And so this next song that I'm going to share, I feel that one of my biggest gifts is my voice, and feel that's a big part of my purpose on the planet. And so I'm going to just be allowing a transmission to come through my voice. And what I do when I'm singing is I'm just tuning into the frequency of the earth and allowing my voice to just open and allow it just to come through. And so I'm just going to be vulnerable and allow the sounds that I'm feeling in the space, and just setting the intention that the earth frequencies and the tones that I'm going to be sharing right now, that it may just bless each one of you and support you in feeling more connected to your body and the healing power and grounded love of Mother Earth. So you're welcome to receive it in whatever way you feel inspired to. And I'm just gonna allow the channel to just be free. just as I share that transmission, I'll just briefly share that I was really just tuning into the ancestors of the land and just giving gratitude for this land that we are upon, honoring the First Nations peoples, the Chumash and the Tongva, and just really felt this deep ancestral connection. And so I just hope that those songs really supported you in feeling that deep ancestral connection and that oneness with Mother Earth. So thank you so much.
I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker tonight, Rich Orloff. He is author of 18 full-length plays, mostly comedies and mostly award-winning. The New York Times calls his play Big Boys Rip-Roaringly Funny, and named Funny as a Crutch by Critic's pick. His comedy Romantic Fools has had over 100 productions in the US, Africa, Asia, and Europe, including 2 productions in Madrid, where apparently they're no better at romance than we are. So, let's give an awesome, warm welcome, giant applause, Rich Orloff.
Thank you for all that applause. It's very optimistic of you. I used to live in LA, but then moved to New York, and I've done this show about 36 times around the country, but this is my first time back in LA. So it's very exciting and somewhat terrifying to be here tonight. Of course, it's also very exciting and terrifying for me to get out of bed in the morning, so I'm kind of used to that. Thank you for coming. The show is 80 minutes long. Then there'll be a short break, and then there'll be a Q&A. Let's see. Please turn off your cell phones if you haven't already. I do reserve the right to, if the phone rings, to go up and take it from you during the show and say something really obnoxious into the phone. Don't test me. I've done this. And finally, in case you were wondering, the name of the show is It's a Beautiful Wound. I emphasize the word wound, not for any dramatic reason, but because sometimes I mumble, and someone once thought the play was It's a Beautiful Womb. That may also be true, but it's a different play. And since you're all going to be looking at me for the next 80 minutes, before I start, I'd just like to take a moment and look at all of you. Late one morning in February 2015, already screwed up, I entered the softly lit den of someone I barely know, who has been recommended to me by someone else I barely know. I sit on the couch, swallow a capsule of Mdma, more commonly known as ecstasy. I lie down, put on an eye mask, and go inward. This is not recreational. I'm taking Mdma because I'm hoping it will release me from a psychological and physical ache that has plagued me for over 2 decades, and which I've hidden from others with all of my might because I was trained to look normal. I wasn't a stranger to Mdma, which is short for methylene dioxymethamphetamine. Some people call the drug Molly, but that's also the name of my grandmother, and I'd hate to confuse the two. So I'll just call it Mdma. The first time I had taken Mdma was shortly before it was made illegal in 1985. Till then, I'd had very limited experience with drugs. I bought a tiny vial of cocaine once, and it took me 6 months to use it up. I always learn a lot by who laughs at that joke. Mdma intrigued me. Friends said that while on it, they felt clarity and open-heartedness. Nobody in 1985 was taking it as a party drug. I was living in LA then, and it was a sunny Sunday afternoon in spring. I purchased the capsule a few months earlier, but so far I was great at finding reasons not to take it. That morning I finished a script, I write plays, and I decided to celebrate. I remember distinctly when I began to feel Mdma's effects. I sat down in my easy chair, and life just felt okay. Deeply, fundamentally okay. I didn't have to do or achieve or overcome anything to make life feel this way. Life just felt profoundly okay. Then I stood up and I asked myself, what do I want to do now? I spent the rest of the afternoon computer shopping. Personal computers were a new thing in 1985, and I put off buying one because, well, there were so many choices, and I was raised to believe there was never more than one right answer, and sometimes not even that many. I was sane enough to know not to buy anything that day, but for once, I wasn't afraid to look like an idiot by asking lots of questions. And you know something? Nobody treated me like an idiot. It was the day I learned geeks like telling you everything they know. I learned a lot from MDMA. It wasn't necessarily a feel-good drug. It was more of a enjoy what you're feeling drug. One day I took it because I just felt stuck in anger. I took a walk, and instead of feeling bliss or even equanimity, I just felt increasing rage. I walked by my neighborhood supermarket and thought, supermarkets are filled with aisles and aisles of overpriced, over-advertised, unnecessary foods that represent everything wrong with America. I stormed into the produce section and thought, look at all the lovely vegetables. It's so wonderful that so many people have worked so hard to bring all these beautiful vegetables so close to me. I walked up and down the aisles with ever-changing feelings. What an abundance of cereals. Do we really need so many kinds of cornflakes? I enjoyed every single moment, not restraining or judging any thought I had. I got very upset when MDMA became illegal because the price doubled. A few years later, I moved to New York City to deepen my commitment to playwriting, and because I'd rather endure 3 months of winter than 12 months of the San Diego freeway. Both my writing and my life kept getting better and better and better. And 1994 was one of the best years of my life. My first 3 good full-length comedies were all produced in a 2-month period. And I was deeply in love with a wonderful woman who just 7 years later would become my ex-wife. Freud observed that all you need for happiness is satisfaction in love and work. In 1994, I was satisfied and happy. Except for one problem. During the summer of 1994, my face and soul occasionally began to ache. My face would contort and lock, while my mind would be overcome with a wave of anguish. I looked and felt like I was trapped inside the Greek mask of tragedy. At first, I'd feel the ache for a moment and it'd go away. But as the years passed, it became more frequent and more intense, until it became my default state whenever I allowed myself to relax. Trying to fall asleep, or relaxing on the couch, or just sometimes waiting on the subway platform, the ache was waiting for me. I could escape it by working too hard, by repressing it in social situations, or just by tensing up. But whenever I fully relaxed, the ache was waiting for me. Relaxing made me tense. To cure the ache, I tried traditional psychotherapy and cognitive therapy, hypnosis, meditation, and yogic breathing. They all benefited me, but none reduced the ache. Nobody I met had ever seen anything like it. Nobody really knew what to do. One therapist, after a year, said, just learn to live with it. I now see a different therapist. I also saw a psychopharmacologist who diagnosed me with depression. Although I've had some of the symptoms of depression, like, for example, being depressed a lot, depression never felt like the really good fit for me. Depression is such a feeble word to describe a place where you feel stuck between hopelessness and terror. A downward pull that is so relentless that you can fight it and fight it and fight it until every now and then you're just exhausted and you just surrender to the darkness. So I tried antidepressants. With more serotonin flowing through me, I felt more buoyant, and getting through the day did become easier. But I was aware that this was symptomatic relief and not a cure. The ache was getting worse. My face and soul would clench, and I could stay that way for hours. And I had no reason to believe the ache wouldn't continue to keep growing year after year, making parts of every single day a quiet and inescapable agony. Several years ago, I began to read about experiments using MDMA to treat people with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. There's strong scientific evidence from groups like MAPS that you heard about that MDMA has helped war veterans and rape victims move beyond the resistance and fear associated with their traumas, so they can finally respond to their trauma with love, acceptance, and forgiveness, and thus be released from trauma's fierce grip. I identified deeply with the PTSD symptoms, especially fear, hypervigilance, and the easily provoked impulse to withdraw. Sometimes I feel like I go through life like an abused dog who seems okay, but who retreats at the slightest threat of danger. But so far, these experimental programs, they've only been for veterans and victims of sexual abuse. I had no event in my past causing PTSD, just some of the symptoms. I saw a path to healing, but no entrance to that path. I felt pretty hopeless. Fortunately, I can feel hopeless and motivated at the same time. It's been a great asset to my career as a playwright. So I sent an email to someone I had met once and who I doubted even remembered me, but who I knew was knowledgeable about MDMA PTSD experiments. I explained my problem, and to my surprise, just a few hours later, I got a reply with the name of someone to contact. I never really expected a reply, which may explain why it took me a year to work up a nerve to write that email. I only waited a day to contact the person suggested to me. And this person is both important to the story and has become very important to my life. And I want to respect this person's privacy, because what this person is doing is illegal. So I will not only give this person a pseudonym, but one that's gender neutral, Sandy. And I will refer to Sandy as both he and she and him and her. If you need to picture someone, try Morgan Freeman or Taylor Swift. I don't care. And I won't say where Sandy lives, except to say maybe somewhere on the East Coast or possibly Finland. A day later, I go to where Sandy lives. Thank God there are cheap flights to Helsinki. Now, Sandy isn't a therapist or a healthcare professional. Sandy is just someone who has gained deep healing from her own experiences on MDMA and psychedelic medicines, and he wants to give back. Sandy explains the protocol to me. Much like the government-approved experiments, I'll take 125 milligrams of MDMA, which is about 1.5 times the average recreational dose, although I have some friends who like to take more than the average recreational dose. Then I'll lie down, put on a sleep mask, listen to music, and let the medicine take me wherever it wants to take me. If I want, after 90 minutes or so, I can take another 75 milligrams and go even deeper. The whole experience will last about 6 hours or so. During this time, Sandy will watch over me, make sure I have water to drink, assist me to the bathroom if I feel unsteady, write down anything I say under the influence so I don't have to make an effort, and be there in any way I need. I don't have to do a thing except, as best I can, allow the experience. Sandy assures me that the medicine I'll be taking, Sandy never refers to it as a drug, is pure MDMA, not ecstasy or Molly, street drugs that may contain MDMA, but are often a mix of speed, bath salts, and for all you know, peanut butter. Then Sandy adds, "This is work." We discuss Sandy's fee. It's more than I'd like to pay, but then so is everything. Given the attention I'll get, it sounds reasonable. And over time, I'm going to learn how extraordinary Sandy's role actually is. I tell Sandy about the ache. Sandy asks if I know what causes it. I'm not sure, but I think it might be related to a decision I made when I was a freshman in high school. Night after night, I lay on my bed and cried. I had no idea why I was crying, so I just willed myself to stop, just clenched and stopped. I've rarely cried since. I asked Sandy how many sessions he thinks it'll take before I feel cured. He tells it for most people it's 4 to 6, sometimes more, and for some people, just 1. Regardless of how many times it's going to take, I'm game, I'm eager. Given my past MDMA experiences, I believe. There's one complication. Antidepressants interfere with the ability of MDMA to work effectively, so I'm told I'm going to have to stop taking them. By now, I've been on Effexor for over a decade. I appreciate the buoyancy I get from it, but that buoyancy is a mixed blessing, the way a life preserver helps keep you afloat, but makes it impossible to dive deep. I want to dive deep. I would need to get rid of my ache. Every time it overcomes me, I'm not engaged in life. So over the next month, I wean myself off Effexor so I can be ready for the adventure. Late one morning in February 2015, I returned to Sandy's softly lit den. Nothing in the room is chic or gaudy. There are a lot of trinkets in the room, and I sense that each one tells a story. This room was not decorated by design. It grew over time. I change into a sweatshirt and sweatpants. I sit on the couch. I swallow 125 milligrams of Mdma with a glass of orange juice. I put on my sleep mask and lie down on the couch. It feels very lived in. Sandy puts a light blanket over me and plays soft classical music, the kind that is flowing and smooth and never demands attention. After 90 minutes, I take a second dose and go even deeper. Without attempting to ever think about anything, a wide range of thoughts enter my head and I say them aloud. Sandy, sitting in an easy chair nearby, ends up filling 19 pages of handwritten notes. Apparently, I'm even more verbal on Mdma than when sober. Here are some of my favorite comments from the day. Some people have to be born to be resented. I think I was resented as a fetus. I'll probably never let go of the ache until I'm on the other side of an immense amount of grieving. If you filter existence through shame, how can you ever see love? There is no need to be ashamed, just slightly embarrassed. Whoever says you have nothing to cry about doesn't know the blessing of tears. My family had a profound lack of empathy. I hunger for empathy. A good comedy is like a child with a needle in a room full of balloons. Many of us make a Faustian bargain at such an early age we don't even know it. We give up our souls for acceptance by our families. We would never appreciate stars if they weren't surrounded by darkness. For the next couple of weeks, my heart feels open, life flows, and I'm really horny. It's nice to be off Effexor. Then while taking a walk one day, my emotions crash. The thought enters my mind, if I had become the person my mom wanted me to be, I'd be dead now. So I guess I should tell you a little about my family and my childhood. In the interest of time, I'm going to leave out everything positive. I was born and raised in Chicago, the youngest of 4 kids in a middle-class Jewish home. My dad was argumentative, easily triggered. He once said to me, life isn't worth living unless you can wake up with a problem. So we had problems every day. He could become furious if he couldn't find his red socks. He could become furious about anything. And at the dinner table, he debated his children about everything, as if agreement was a sign of weakness. Once during an argument, I said, you know, Dad, you can be really disagreeable. I disagree, he said. And that's how I learned the concept of irony. But beyond his temper and hostility, I have no memories of the two of us ever just playing together, of just hanging out together, of him enjoying me. Possibly as a result, I was very attached to my mom, who was as calm and reserved as my dad was volatile. I never saw her raise her voice, or cry, or get silly. She never said, I love you, or I'm sorry. But just as my dad was always a dependable breadwinner, my mom always made sure her children were fed and clothed. She took care of us when we were sick. I was never beaten or sexually abused, and neither of my parents were alcoholics. There was never the kind of incident to which I could point and say, well, that explains things. Once when my mom was at the supermarket with my brother Cliff, who was maybe 4 at the time, he got upset. There are lots of home movies of him running around crying. And he complained that she was the worst mommy in the world. She replied, the supermarket is filled with mommies. If you don't like me, go find another one. Cliff ran around the supermarket and finally returned crying, I want you to be my mommy. Good, my mom said. Then behave. I didn't know this story when I was a kid. My mom told it to me when I was an adult. When she finished it, she said proudly, Wasn't I clever? Of course, memory is a tricky thing. For years, I remember this story not being about my brother Cliff, but as being about me. When I brought this up to my mom, she said, "Oh no, you were never a problem." By then, I'd had enough therapy to realize that never being a problem was not a healthy thing. I don't have many childhood memories of my sister Sharon, who was 12 years older than me, or my older brother Neil, 9 years older than me. Neil went to MIT, Harvard Business School, and Columbia Law School. Cliff, 6 years older than me, graduated from Cornell and then went to Princeton. When I was a boy, my parents used to rave to others about how well my brothers did in school. And then they always added, "And Richard is going to go the farthest." The first time I did homework, the second night of second grade, I couldn't sleep. I got up twice to make sure it was flawless. Even at 7, the stakes were incredibly high. There was one other member of my household growing up, my mom's mom, my grandma Molly. She lived with us, and since in the interest of time I'm leaving out everything positive, there's nothing to say about her. She was never demanding, always kind, and had soft blue eyes, the color of tranquil waters. During my freshman year of college, Oberlin College, called the Harvard of the Midwest, especially by people who were rejected from Harvard, when thoughts of suicide entered my mind, the possibility that my death could cause my grandma any pain stopped those thoughts instantly. I really didn't think anybody else in my family would be too upset. They would have been, but I didn't know that. The thought I had that night I take the walk, if I had become the person my mom wanted me to be, I'd be dead now, shakes my inner world. So I scheduled a second session with Sandy. Here are some thoughts from that day. I see a minefield. I have to walk carefully to avoid landmines and barbed wire. The minefield is the legacy of how it felt being a child in my family. I project that minefield onto everything. At a very early age, I gave everyone in my family the power to validate me and invalidate me. It was at that moment I lost all my power. My life has been a quest for validation in lieu of love. I'm not as flowing as I was the first time. During my first session, I took joy in Sandy's willingness to take notes and be there for me. This time, I doubt it's really okay. I fear that if I ask too much, he'll resent me. I can feel the wall inside me, the wall that makes me clench when I ache, and it never loosens its grip. I breathe into it to relax it. It doesn't work. I breathe into it again. Nothing. I'm resolved to break through this wall. I've taken 2 doses, but I asked Sandy if I could have a third. Sandy pauses, reflects, and agrees to give it to me. I take it, I continue to breathe, and finally, it's not working. I've taken too much. Instead of flowing, I just feel tense and foggy and twitchy for hours. I need to use the bathroom. Sandy is taking a short break, so I walk to the bathroom. But as I return, my legs won't support me. I fall to the floor. I crawl back to the couch. Sandy puts a blanket over me and assures me I can spend the night if I want. He makes me soup. I really just want to go home, but it's hours before I have the strength to stand. I realize that in pushing so hard to make progress, I've actually been fighting the medicine. Just as love can't be forced, my healing won't come about by pushing to make it happen. Wounds take time to heal. There's no schedule for when I have my sessions. I just let inspiration guide me. 2 months later, I return to the softly lit den. I do not want to let go of a paradigm that I know doesn't work, the impress instead of love paradigm. I do not believe in the existence of love, even though I've experienced it. I love my resentment. In my family, we bonded over us all loving resentment. I don't know if God will forgive me. I don't know if God gets off on forgiving or not forgiving. I really want to forgive me. I made some horrible decisions that saved my life. My final thought during the session is, there is a place inside me where I really hate me. This is not only resistance, this is hate, pure hate. Maybe I can't let go because I'm afraid the hate part of me will devour me. Clearly, my journey is not over yet. I spent July 4th weekend that year with friends at PEX, which is a Burning Man-style event in Maryland. It's my second time. A year earlier, I had a wonderful time with a wonderful woman who just 3 months later developed strong platonic feelings for me. One night, my friends decided to take LSD. Now, I've taken LSD 4 times. I've loosened up since the mid-'80s, and the first 3 times were great. The first time in a park with friends was just filled with joys and giggles. The second time, I saw an evening of animated shorts with a friend. The cartoons were boring, but the bathroom was amazing. The third time, one night at Burning Man, I was hanging out with friends, went to use the porta potty, couldn't find my way back, returned to the porta potty, turned around, walked backwards, and found my friends. So I began to think, I like drugs. And I decided to take LSD by myself one day. I ate a cube, no idea the dosage. I went to a park, and suddenly I had doubt about every single thought I had, including my doubt about every single thought I had. I was cold, I was confused, and I literally didn't know which way to turn. And I was too ashamed of my state to ask for help. When I finally somehow got back home, I realized how much my family had taught me to never trust my instincts, and that to ask for help was to open myself up for judgment. So my friends at PEX offered me LSD. No way. I've been doing enough inner work, and I just want a night off. I'm not going to risk it by taking anything as strong as LSD. No way. Instead, I take a lighter drug called 2CB. It's described as LSD light. I've taken it a few times. I've had a flowing, happy, slightly surreal high each and every single time. Till this time. In a white dome with friends, I lie down and clench in anguish. What strikes me is not only the primal terror I feel, but my complete inability to comfort myself. Despite feeling consumed, I'm able to observe this. Imagine this is how babies feel at times. Why they cry even if they're not hungry or tired or cold or in pain. Sometimes life is just scary, and to an infant, that fear can be all-consuming. Back in my cabin, I lay in my bed, locked in fear, as if the ache is magnified 1,000 times. 2 friends take turns holding me, and when they do, I don't feel okay, but I feel safe. The second they stop, the terror returns. When I return to normal, someone refers to my experience as a bad trip. I correct her. It was a challenging trip. But if this is what it felt like to be a terrified infant in a family where physical touch was as rare as emotional comfort, then I want to know. August 2015. During my next session, I feel waves of shame and waves of ache. I put my hands on my face, touching it softly, and the ache relaxes for a while. Over and over, I do this. But when the MDMA leaves my system, the wall comes back as strong as ever. I begin to wonder if I'm deserving of love or should be ashamed. It's like shame and love are battling for possession of my soul. I'm beginning to think that I could have 1,000 sessions on MDMA, and I just keep hitting this wall. So I asked Sandy if he knows of anything that might help. We agree that on my next session, I'll add a small amount of psilocybin mushrooms to the mix. Now, psilocybin is a natural psychedelic that's been used by ancient civilizations and indigenous cultures and people at Pink Floyd concerts. Recent experiments with psilocybin have helped cancer patients significantly reduce their fear of dying. Now, I've had a few mushroom experiences. Several years ago, one hot June night, at an outdoor dance party on the Lower East Side in Manhattan, I brought a bag of mushrooms that had been in my freezer 18 months. I asked a friend if he thought they were still potent. Probably not, he said, so I chugged them. If you learn nothing else tonight, learn this. Do not take an unknown quantity of mushrooms of unknown potency on the same day you've been to the mermaid parade, bar hopping, and to an outdoor dance party. After 30 minutes, the face of a woman I was talking to began to glitter and glisten. 30 seconds later, I needed to lie down. I could barely move. I tried to tell a friend I needed help, but that involved language, a skill I did not currently have. Finally, another friend said, "You need to go home, don't you?" Thank God I was capable of nodding. My friend took my hand and walked me to the street to get a cab. We practiced saying my address. I told the cabbie where I lived and buckled my seatbelt. The cab took off in a bolt and swerved to the left and swerved to the right and made one left turn after another after another. Where is he taking me? I looked at my watch. I had been in the cab 30 seconds. I've learned to respect drugs. At my next session, we begin as usual with 125 milligrams of MDMA. But instead of taking a second dose, after about 90 minutes, I drink a tea made from 1 gram of mushrooms. And then I swallow the mushroom bits at the bottom. The ache becomes stronger, but not intolerable. To my surprise, instead of cuddly thoughts, I hear a male voice reminding me that I'm not that vulnerable little child anymore. Like a friendly slap in the face, it just says, "Man up." I wasn't expecting that. I'm much more comfortable with my warm, soft, nice energy. I kind of like this. My thoughts continue. We're autonomous beings looking for love. Now that's a recipe for disaster. I surrendered my autonomy at an early age. I made this deal. I'm so ashamed for whatever reason you want me to be ashamed. I'm scared to give up shame. I don't know what else will protect me. It's not the ache, it's the clinging that hurts so much. As the journey continues, I see a wall of shame. I sit outside of it in the meditation pose, waiting patiently for the doors to open. No hurry. I feel a lot of ache and it just kind of sticks there. For now I accept this is where I am. In the weeks after the session, I ask myself, what do I need to do to progress further? I decide I need to separate from my mom. Not my real mom, who died a decade earlier, a few years after my dad, but my inner mom, the construct inside of me that's always been way too attached to her and the way she looked at life. The boy who's gotten the message, be ashamed and don't man up. Behave. For my next session, fall 2015, no MDMA. I take 3 grams of psilocybin mushrooms, which is considered a full dose. I have far fewer thoughts than on MDMA. Times I twitch, times I clench. There's wrestling going on inside my psyche. At one point I ask Sandy to hold my hand for strength. Another point I sit up and face her, projecting my mom onto her, and I yell, "You're the tyrant! I resist seeing the tyranny in you, but I see it!" I relax back into a sleep-like state. At moments I sense I'm quietly reconnecting to parts of my disconnected, abandoned self. It's as if inside of me there's a mass of tangled wires connected to a switchboard. And on mushrooms, those wires are slowly untangled and reconnected in a cleaner, healthier way. To my soul, to my ego. I've always been ashamed of my ego. In my family, I was told, "You're so selfish," whenever I didn't do what the other person wanted me to do. But now I see that the ego has an essential purpose, to protect our soul. An unhealthy ego strives for a false sense of greatness, whereas a healthy ego simply says, I have value. I have an inexorable right to exist. At one point, I look at Sandy and say, "I can drive this car, can't I?" Sandy agrees. By the end of the session, I feel like I've accomplished my goal. I've separated from my mom. Be careful what you wish for. The next month, I feel a depth of loneliness like I've never felt before. Some days I spend hours on my bed, cringing in a fetal position, clutching my pillow. I've gotten rid of one inner construct, but I haven't replaced it yet with a new one. But I can only allow myself to ache for so long because I'm busy spending the rest of my days and my nights and my weekends living out a comment I made during one of my sessions. Producing a play is a gift of love to that play. Now, I'd already produced 6 of my plays off-Broadway, and I can say with confidence, producing a play is a high-risk drug. A few were published, a couple flopped, and one became a New York Times critic's pick. The high lasted a year. The play I've been working on when I begin these sessions has had well-received readings at 15 theaters around the country, but nobody has stepped up to produce it. So I decided to produce it myself off-Broadway. My dad would be very proud of me because every day I wake up with a problem. Some days, many problems. I accept that I can't go inward and deal with all the demands of outward at the same time. So I do what I can to just build a temporary structure to just get through the next 5 months leading up to the production. Whoever said, if you build it, they will come, has never worked off-Broadway. I get a good audience by off-Broadway standards, which is whenever there are more people in the audience than on stage. A lot of folks love the play, some don't, and the all-powerful New York Times shows up and goes, not negative, just I spent 4 years on that play, researching it, writing it, developing it through 16 drafts, and producing it. But without validation from the Times, the play's life soon comes to an end. It's a challenging trip. March 2016. Back in the softly lit den, I take 125 milligrams of Mdma. I'm really going to have to give up grandiosity, and I don't want to. I've used grandiosity to hide my shame. I may need to repair the ego before I can repair the wound. It's hard to believe that people love me as I am. I need to own my disbelief. Love never demands. I think it will demand always, and this is why I have such a difficult relationship with it. My wound has more knowledge than the rest of me put together. Be the courage to be with the wound. It's a beautiful wound. After a couple of hours, I take 2 grams of psilocybin mushrooms. I become less verbal. My ache is deep and consuming. I am at a turning point. Do I choose love, or do I choose to stay with them? As I continue my inner journey, I hear more and more about people who've had psychologically healing experiences with the Amazonian plant medicine, Ayahuasca. Legally in Peru and illegally throughout the world, including Finland, people gather for group ceremonies, usually starting late at night, where shamans offer a thick brew made from 2 plants, and people go into deep hallucinogenic states for hours. Some have said the experience cured them of depression. Some have also said the experience terrified them to their core with no way out till it's over. I'm intrigued, but scared. Ayahuasca sounds too intense, too confrontational, and most importantly, too likely to induce vomiting. Everyone I know who's taken it talks about vomiting, and feel free to judge me. I don't like to vomit. I'm just afraid ayahuasca won't like me. I'm afraid that once I'm in its power, it's going to call me on all my shit. My older brothers used to call me on all my shit. I used to think that was good for me. Now I realize they just enjoyed making me feel like shit. And even when I fought back, just agreeing to play the game meant they won. I've gotten on an email list for a shaman who conducts ayahuasca experiments somewhere by a beautiful lake or the Baltic Sea. We met a year earlier the way most people meet their shamans, at a benefit in Tribeca for a Burning Man theme camp. I asked to be put on her email list just in case one day I'm ready. In the spring of 2016, I feel ready. Maybe ayahuasca can cure my ache. I arrive at a former church for the overnight ceremony. The attic has been converted into a space with about 20 mattresses, pillows, blankets, and buckets. The others in the group range in age, gender, ethnicity, and experience with ayahuasca. A few of us are newbies. One person has taken it 40 times. The shaman has taken it over 400 times. She's not from the Amazon, but she spent years there learning from local shamans. I trust her. It's a gut feeling. The ceremony begins shortly before midnight. Because it's my first time, the shaman just gives me only half the usual dose of ayahuasca. It's a thick, acrid goo that tastes like a mix of, "Oh my God, I can't believe anything tastes this bad," and, "Oh my God, it does taste this bad." I don't feel much, and I wait impatiently for the opportunity to drink more. So when she offers the group a second helping, I'm the first to approach her. She chants over the cup and puffs smoke into it. I drink. It doesn't taste better if you let it breathe. And I return to my mattress. Whoa. Soon I'm purging my guts out. Fortunately, I followed instructions. I haven't eaten anything in 8 hours. I surrender to the purging, and I kind of get into it. It doesn't hurt. It feels like a release. At times the ache is strong, and once again I clench in a fetal position. One of the assistants holds my hand and encourages me to just breathe. I'm glad not to be alone. I've spent way too much of my life alone. Self-reliance is exhausting. This is the weirdest trip I have ever been on. For a while, I think I'm in the grips of an alien consciousness. I don't see aliens. I'm just mildly concerned they've taken over my brain. Or maybe I'm their plaything, and they've always been manipulating my brain. Maybe they've been doing that to all of us. This is scary, but if it's true, maybe I should just surrender to it and see where it leads. Then, as if they're bored or just shy, the aliens leave my head. I drift. At one point, my grandmother appears in front of me like a holographic image. She doesn't say anything. She's just there, hovering peacefully. I decide to go down deep into my heart. It's like I'm taking a spiritual elevator into the subterranean levels of my being. As I descend, I see my heart's depth of wisdom and experience. The answers are in my heart. I sense there's love and beauty in the room. Then I resist believing this. I sense there's divinity in the shaman. And then I resist believing that. This awareness-resistance dynamic is recurring and crystal clear. I never overcome it, but I observe it without shame. In the morning, over breakfast, I share my experience with others. Everyone talks about their resistance to letting go. Everyone's ego wanted to stay in control. So I guess I'm not the only one with this problem. The conversation is as healing as any other part of the experience. But I still ache. Well, under the influence of ayahuasca, I asked the medicine, what should I do next? I hear I should continue my journey with Sandy. So a few weeks later, I'm back in the softly lit den. I decide to vary the pattern, to begin with a full dose of mushrooms, 3 grams, and then follow it later with MDMA. I like the confrontational power of mushrooms, and I like the loving hug of MDMA, a kind of female energy to balance the male energy of psilocybin. The psilocybin hits me hard. Once again, I'm twitching and resisting and accepting and releasing and twitching and resisting and accepting and twitching and resisting. And I am fighting demon armies and I don't know which side I am on. Truth is, I am on both sides. I acknowledge I am the resistance. I take the MDMA. I have spent my whole life resisting my own beauty. Resistance is a motherfucker, isn't it? It's where we get our false self from. By the way, I've never used the word motherfucker before in my life, not once. I do not need to see me as a victim anymore. And I will see myself as a victim, and I forgive that too. I think I need to forgive life itself. A few weeks later, I buy some mushrooms. I take a very small amount, and all my feelings inside intensify. I call a friend, and I vent unashamedly about my upbringing. My friend vents unashamedly about hers. We're having a blast. Don't rush to forgive. Don't jump over the anger. Make room for the rage. Dance on the wall. The resistance, not the trauma, is the problem that prevents healing. The summer of 2016, I'm feeling pretty damn open-hearted. My newest play gets a reading in the Berkshires, and halfway through the first rehearsal, I think, I'm safe here. This is a new feeling for me. I call a friend about it, and I start to sob on the phone. For the next 2 days of rehearsals, I take regular breaks, go somewhere, and sob. This feels like progress. In late afternoon, I return to the softly lit den. That's become valuable for me to bring intentions to my sessions. For this one, I consider, I want to create a safe place for my soul. Or maybe, I want to flood my shame with love. These sound sweet and kind and wonderful. But when I'm honest with myself, really honest, I realize the intention I most desire is, I want to tell my brother Neil to fuck off. I can't do this in person because my actual brother Neil died in 2003. But I still hear his voice in my head, and trust me, he's just as much of an asshole dead as he was alive. Critical, dismissive, demeaning. Not when I was a kid, we rarely spent time together, but when I became an adult. When I was in my 20s and I fell in love with a woman in another city, when sex was so beautiful, it felt like our souls were touching. I told Neil, and he replied, in my experience, long-distance relationships never work. When I fell in love with playwriting and I shared with him the unbelievable joy I got writing plays, he replied, what if you wake up 20 years from now and you've never written a good play? At my wedding, he never congratulated me, but he did pull me aside at the party to point out how I could have written the invitation better. I could go on, but okay, one more. When I decided to move from LA to New York to live the life I wanted, after I sold all my things, after I made all my arrangements, and after I adjusted to something completely unexpected, my friends were acting like they were really going to miss me. After my heart opened up more than it had in years, Neil said to me, Rich, I'm concerned about you. I don't think you have what it takes to make it in New York. I don't think you have what it takes to make it as a playwright. And I think your whole approach to life is foolish. My heart closed. I sank into depression. I don't think Neil's comments were for quite so much, except, well, growing up, he was held up as the perfect son. And when your dad is as disapproving as mine was, well, I think I wanted Neil's approval far more than I ever wanted my dad's. And the week after my ayahuasca experience, I walked around filled with loving thoughts. And each time I had a loving thought, my inner Neil would show up, criticize it, and put me down. Soon I didn't have loving thoughts nearly as often or feel them nearly as deeply. I stopped hearing Neil so much, but nor did I hear my soul as much. I need to tell him to get the hell out of my psyche. I don't know if this is possible, but hell, why not try? I drink the tea of 3 grams of mushrooms, and I eat the pieces at the bottom of the cup. I lay back and relax. The visuals become delightful. I tell Sandy, I'm not seeing God, but I'm sure enjoying his light show. I'm also feeling a lot of fear and resistance, so I swallow my capsule of Mdma. Soon thereafter, I'm accessing a place where I don't need Neil. It's as if I see with unprecedented clarity the damage my family did to me and how I bought into a paradigm that was so self-destructive. I see how as a child I constantly yearned for approval from people who got their strength from not giving it to me. I became so focused on getting their approval that I dismissed almost all the other love and acceptance I've gotten in my life. This paradigm has controlled my mind. I see it, and I let go. I don't try to let go. I don't struggle to let go. I just let go. I know this isn't okay, I'm healed now, but I've taken a step beyond my trauma. I go deeper. I sense beyond my trauma there's a more genuine wound. And so with some fear, I dive down to access that wound. And I see a very young, scared infant who just wants to suckle and be held, and who was shamed for it. The unmet hunger was the wound, but the shaming was the trauma. I'm beginning to feel enormously insecure. So I asked Sandy, is it okay for me to go with the ride? Yes, she replies. Can you tell me again that it is okay to go with the ride? Yes, he replies. I really don't need them anymore, do I? No. Is it okay with you if I'm a complete failure? Yes. This feels like one of the most liberating moments of my life. If I'm not afraid of being a failure, my family has no power over me. Is it really okay to let go of my family? Yes, Sandy replies. Every time I think to give them up, I risk death. Sandy says, it's time. I breathe in the words, and I'm bathed in light. It's beyond life is okay. It's a state one can't achieve through achievement. It's a place that's simple and divine and welcoming. It's a place where I go, oh, now I get it. I really don't need you anymore, family. And if I stumble and fall, there are others who will pick me up. And if I just lie there, that's fine too. I take a sip of water and say, I rejoice in water. The more I can rejoice in life itself, the less I will need them. Good water. Now I've learned to always give myself at least 2 days to recover from these sessions. One to just lie around like a zombie, talk to friends, and demand nothing of myself. On the second day, sometimes I feel a post-MDMA crash, which I've learned not to take too seriously. And I usually go for a swim. Just before I'm about to leave, I hear in my head, play Here Comes the Sun. What? Play Here Comes the Sun. So I turn on my computer, find Here Comes the Sun on YouTube, and I play it. As I listen to it, I begin to sob more deeply than I have since I was 13. I play it again and sob. I play it again and sob. There's sadness in the tears, but no pain. Indeed, the part of me that is watching me let go rejoices. Over the next 2 weeks, I feel a joy in life itself. One evening, I cross the street and I just look at the sky, and the clouds are just so beautiful, I just stare at them. Till I remember that staring at clouds in the middle of a New York intersection might not be a good idea. I still ache a lot, but it doesn't bother me. I come up with a 3-word definition of God. Wow. Life. Cool. So many ideas and insights pour into my mind that one afternoon I'm walking down the block and I yell, enough with the epiphanies! Not out loud, of course. I'm a bit manic, but I'm not crazy. I'm also feeling deeply insecure and raw, but I can handle it. Wow. Life. Cool. Making decisions that used to be torturous come easily. I have a couple of free days, and I'm tempted to rent a car, drive to the Berkshires, and see a few plays that friends are connected with. Normally, I would agonize over such decisions and probably talk myself out of them. The expense, the hassle. What if I don't like the plays? This time I asked myself, is it okay if I go to the Berkshires for a couple of days, even if it's a complete mistake? And I reply, yes. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is that while driving down a country road, my belly becomes consumed with the worst pain I've ever had. My belly is on fire. I pull into a mall and enter a bank. I ask the teller, where is the closest hospital? The hospital is just a mile down the road, so I decide to drive there. Now you might think this is crazy. I have a rental car, and if I leave it in this mall, I'll never find it. I enter the emergency room of the hospital. There are only a few people waiting there. Sun shines through the large picture windows. Within minutes, I'm seeing a doctor. I describe my pain to him, and part of me must still be enmeshed in my family construct because I fully expect him to reply, "Stop whining. What are you, a baby?" I think the first time I heard that, I was a baby. Within minutes, I'm given morphine. Now, it's never been on my list of drugs to try, but I can see why it's so popular. They give me a CT scan, and the surgeon tells me my appendix is highly inflamed and about to burst. Well, I sign this form giving them permission to operate. He seems like a nice guy. And I'm not in the mood to do comparison shopping. Besides, although this form waives my ability to sue them, I think, I'm on morphine. How good can this signature be? I'm finding all of this really amusing. And more importantly, I trust the part of me that decides to trust them. I highly recommend Berkshire Medical Center if you ever need an emergency appendectomy in the Berkshires. Surgery goes very smoothly. I'm treated with warmth and humanity by everyone there. By the next day, I'm walking down the hall. Amazing. The following day, the director of my reading earlier that summer and his wife, people I barely know, they pick me up, drop off my rental car at the local franchise, and drive me to a nearby Amtrak station for a train back to New York. I highly recommend Amtrak if you ever need a train ride after an appendectomy. Just make sure you've timed the pain meds not to wear off till you get home. Back home, friends hear about what happened, and they're so concerned. But I feel great. People cared for me when I needed them. I'm not alone. I'm alive. This is the post-shame, post-fear, post-PTSD framework that I want to cultivate the rest of my life. A few days later, I start to feel a new pain, sharp and excruciating every time I use the bathroom. I get another CT scan, which shows I've developed an abdominal abscess, a plum-sized pocket of fluid resting at the intersection of my bladder and my rectum, which is not an intersection where you want a plum blocking traffic. My New York doctor tells me that in the evening, I should check into a hospital whose name I won't mention. The next day, interventional radiologists will drain my abscess. I go to the hospital's emergency room that night to check in. It's crowded and dingy. I wait for hours before I'm admitted, not to a hospital room, there are no beds available, but into the packed ER. Every cubicle is taken, so I'm led to a gurney in the hall. A nurse hooks me up to an IV bag with antibiotics, tells me to just wait there until a hospital bed is available. So I wait and wait. A couple of residents talk to me briefly, but they always seem hurried, like I'm a faceless item on a long to-do list. I wait and wait, curled up on the gurney. It's not until 5 a.m. when a nurse finally admits, "Oh, you'll be lucky if there's a bed available for you in the morning." I finally take off my shoes. In the morning, I'm transferred to a hospital room, but I'm told there's no guarantee that the radiologist will be able to see me that day. I may have to wait in this room until the next day. A nurse brings me 2 laxatives and a stool softener and tells me to take them. I tell her, I'm not constipated. I haven't eaten in 36 hours, and it hurts like hell every time I use the bathroom. Why do I need to take these? You don't have to take them, she says. Then she tells me to get into the hospital bed, where she sticks those sticky tabs all over my chest and hooks me up to an EKG machine. With my IV tube in one arm and all these wires connected to me, I'm bedridden. I have no heart problems, I tell her. Why do I need to be hooked up to a monitor? That's how we do things on this floor, she says, and leaves. I notice the hospital's motto on the wall. We put patients first. But for you, we'll make an exception. If Berkshire Medical Center represented the safe, loving world I want to live in, this hospital represents the unsafe, neglecting world that's shaped how I've perceived life. I'm tired, overwhelmed, and scared. My life is at stake, and I trust nobody. So I decide to trust me instead of them. I rip off the EKG tabs and I get out of bed. I inform the nurse what I've done, and a half hour later, a doctor gives me approval to have already done it. 8 hours later, I'm finally told the abscess will be drained. It goes smoothly, and the next morning, after 2 days without food, they bring me breakfast, a cheese omelet. Have I mentioned I'm lactose intolerant? The pains reduce a little, but they're not going away. During follow-up visits and more hospital screw-ups, I keep asking, what caused this abscess? Nobody seems to know. And I wonder, can I trust my own body to heal? It takes over a month before the pains fully disappear. Perhaps not coincidentally, it's also a month before a doctor tells me that abscesses are not an uncommon side effect of appendectomies. By now, my state of harmony with the universe has completely disappeared, and the ache is as strong as ever. October 2016. When my body finally feels ready, I schedule another session. For the week leading up to it, I slow down. I read. I take walks. I review my notes from my previous sessions. I'm struck by my use of the word divinity. I would like to better feel the divinity of other people. I'm scared to show my divinity. I fear it will be demolished. Now, in my day-to-day life, I say divinity just slightly more than I say motherfucker. Growing up, well, my parents had a deep commitment to shallow Judaism. I never sensed religion brought them comfort or wisdom. It just gave them identity. Once I asked my dad if he believed in God, and he replied, everyone has a boss, and God is boss of the universe. Which is a theory just didn't seem too well thought out, because my dad was self-employed. Something's changing inside of me. Following an impulse, I attend Yom Kippur services for the first time in years. For the first time ever, I feel connected to the prayers. The morning of my session, I wake refreshed, enthused, and open. Sandy calls. He woke up with the flu, so we reschedule our session for the next week. It's a stressful week. Work has piled up, and there's no way I can spend another week slowing down. I may make a few bad personal choices, and I just become increasingly tense. I wake in the morning of my session in a mood I describe as, fuck you and stay the fuck away from me. I'm seriously tempted to cancel, but perhaps this is the mood I need to be in. If the medicine can break through this, then anything is possible. My intention is, I want to touch the divine and surrender my womb to it. And I've made one other decision. I want to take a larger dose of mushrooms, 5 grams, which is sometimes called a heroic dose. I'm hoping it will break through my resistance and return me to the blissful framework that I've lost. I drink half the tea and eat half the mushroom bits. 15 minutes later, I drink the rest of the tea and eat the rest of the mushroom bits. Soon, I move into a state of such clenched fear that I worry I'm only re-traumatizing myself. I take a capsule of MDMA, which helps just a bit. Over the next few hours, I'm only partially aware of what happens. At one point, I sit up, filled with rage, and I say, with every fiber of my being, I will protect myself. I have an image of my family beating up my soul. They took away every safe place, including God. I'm scared there's nothing, no divinity, nothing. I see myself on the edge of a kind of psychic cliff, and I realize that at some point I'm going to need to surrender my defenses and jump into the void. I'm afraid to jump to the other side. No one will catch me. They made surrender such an ugly concept. I accept that I'm still not ready to jump. 2 sessions later, I have one of the most horrific, terrifying experiences of my life, but not in a bad way. I'm tired of perpetuating the wall of resistance that keeps me from letting go of my ache. But I also accept I can't blast my way through it. So late one morning in February 2017, 2 years since I began this journey, I returned to the softly lit den with one intention. I want to see what's on the other side. The night before the session, my fear grows so strong that I call Sandy and I ask if I should cancel it. Sandy reassures me, saying, there's no need for heroics. Even if I wake up the next morning and decide to cancel, I can do so. I ask Sandy, if I turn into a complete puddle, will you be there for me? Sandy says she will. The next morning in the softly lit den, before I'm willing to drink the mushroom tea, once again I ask, if I turn into a complete puddle, will you be there for me? Sandy says she will. I drink the tea and eat the mushroom bits at the bottom of the cup. Soon I'm thrust into a vortex of unremitting horror, so terrifying, so unbearable, that I quickly take the capsule of MDMA. The horror remains so strong that I wonder if the MDMA is having any effect. Should I take more? No, I think. I just need to experience this. I wail, I howl, I twitch, I yell repeatedly, they were so mean! I am a helpless infant, bonded to nobody, feeling completely alone in an unsafe world. Remember that night of fear I felt on 2CB? It was just a glimpse of what I'm experiencing now. Ah, the horror, I say. Ah, the horror. When I ask, Sandy holds my hand. When I ask, Sandy hugs me. When I'm about to retch, Sandy comes quickly to me and holds a pail under my face. At other times, I open my eyes and I just see him standing there, watching me with concern. I am a puddle, and she is there for me. A few times I have to use the bathroom, and Sandy escorts me. I know where I am, and I know that if I just keep my eyes open, I can avoid the horror. But that place is inside me. I want to know it. I've been avoiding it all my fucking life. No more. The MDMA hasn't reduced the horror. It just helps me accept it. If this is a place I felt as an infant, no wonder I would do anything to escape it, even if it meant disconnecting from part of my own soul. For some of us, our first trauma may be our experience of life itself. At times I swear at my family and I give them the finger. But then with an angry passion, I begin admitting horrible things I've done. Times I've been mean and cruel towards myself. Times I've pushed people away who loved me because of my deep distrust. And times I've felt power and resentment. It's not just like I feel like I'm in a safe place to do so. In a profound way, I just don't care anymore. I'm coming out from hiding. I say to Sandy, I'm going to have to earn my trust. As the session winds down, Sandy asks about my parents. My mom was born in a shtetl in Russia. where she and her siblings practiced how to hide in case there was a pogrom. Ah, the horror. Her father was arrested and banished to Siberia. He escaped, but until then, she didn't know if she would ever see him alive again. Ah, the horror. The family escaped to the US, but until Ellis Island, despite having all the proper papers, they weren't sure they'd be allowed in this country. Ah, the horror. My dad grew up in Chicago in economic comfort, but his parents were cold and demanding. His father once told him, never show fear. His mother once scolded him because she saw another boy hug his mom, and she barked to my dad, why can't you act like that? This is a boy who never knew love and who never felt safe. Ah, the horror. The healing will come in admitting my needs and asking for help. I need other people, and that's okay. I accept the part of me that yearns. It's a few months before I consider having another session. I don't want to risk going through that horror again. But over time, I think, I could go through that horror again. It's just a memory, a feeling. I can handle it. I'm not a helpless infant anymore. In one of my sessions, my intention is to banish shame. I'm scared to boldly state this as an intention. If I give up shame, do I have to give up all the perks that go with it? Like resentment, bitterness, and victimhood? They've been my best buddies for decades. Once again, I feel a profound rewiring going on, and it does feel like I've banished shame for a few days. But my experience of shame has changed. It's more like, oh, there it goes again. I'm less invested in it. I'm less victimized by it. I take it less seriously. On my stronger days, when I feel a wave of shame rise up, I just say, okay, shame, come on out. Present yourself. Shame is the cockroach of emotions. It's hard to kill, but if you shine a light on it, it runs and hides. February 2018, 3 years after my first session under the influence, I returned to the softly lit den for my 16th session. Despite all the insights over the last few years, I still haven't made the leap I need to make to heal the ache. I've been considering several intentions, but the one I keep returning to is, say goodbye and just walk away. I'm not really sure what this means, but I sense it's say goodbye to any thoughts and ideas that perpetuate suffering. The night before the session, I realized that this warm-sounding intention is actually huge. I've clung to a lot of ideas, even if they haven't served me. I held on to my life in LA too long, to my marriage too long, to my family too long, and to all sorts of relationships and ideas too long. And beyond anything else, I hold on to the belief that I need to hold on. If I really let go, will I be saying goodbye to myself? Or just an idea that I've been holding on to? In the den, as the mushrooms take effect, I see my family loading an identity into my mind, and I say, get the fuck out of here with that identity. At another point, I see my family trying to unload all their suffering into me, and I tell them to leave, saying, I don't want to carry your pain any longer. An hour later, as the Mdma kicks in, the focus of the journey changes. 3 times I sit up, look at Sandy and say, will you receive me? 3 times Sandy replies, yes. So like to connect with God, all I have to do is give up my identity? That's about it, Sandy says. That's a huge ask, I say. Yes, it is. You'll be there on the other side, right? Yes. God will be there too, right? Yes. I'm not giving up anything important. A true God does not want to take my wonderfulness away from me. I bring my suffering child to you, and I surrender it. A true God doesn't want anything back. I feel my heart open. From a very deep place, a place that can't be faked, I apologize to myself for all the times I've mistreated me, for every time I took their side and treated myself harshly. I've read a lot over the years about the importance of self-forgiveness. But how can you have true self-forgiveness without self-apology? I reply, I accept my apology with forgiveness. And I say, I've missed me so much. I love how I feel in the weeks after the session, except one problem. I still ache. Maybe that stupid therapist was right. Just live with it. Or maybe, just maybe, there's something I need to do differently. One more session, July 2018. My intention is, I want to heal the ache. I've never said it so simply or boldly before. I've never felt so ready. Leading up to the session, I asked myself, why haven't I been able to let go of the ache? Why haven't I been able to make the leap? And I just sense I'll never be able to do this alone. And I've never done anything quite like this before. I write several friends and I ask for their support in whatever way feels comfortable for them. My friends reply with emails of love. One writes, give the ache a hug from me as it floats off and leaves you free. I combine my email and my friend's replies into a document to bring with me to the session. As I print it out, I suddenly get something. It's not going to be enough to bring their love for me. I also have to bring with me my love for them. In the softly lit den, Sandy and I agree that this time I'll only take psilocybin. I need to go through this without the softening effects of MDMA. But there's an MDMA capsule on the table just in case. A friend of Sandy's has made chocolates, each containing 1 gram of mushrooms. I eat one. Let's just say that if psychedelic mushrooms ever become legal, I hope someone comes up with a better recipe. And a half hour later, I eat a second. An hour later, I'm feeling almost nothing, and so I eat a third. A half hour later, I eat a fourth. A few minutes later, whoa. I'm not feeling horror, I'm not feeling bliss. All I'm feeling is I'm being taken on quite a ride. At one point, I sit up and say, when you are served a glass of love, don't spit it out. And then I close my eyes and go back into the depths. Another point, I open my eyes and I tell Sandy to hand me all the emails from my friends. I hold them tightly to my chest and I say, the ache is no match for my friends. Then I close my eyes again. A few minutes later, I experience God. It's not like I see God or hear God. I just know I'm in the presence of God. And God is big, incredibly, inconceivably big. Imagine the biggest big you could think of, then multiply that big by infinity. That big. And I get really nervous because I'm not big. I am at best life size. And if God wanted to, God could just squish me like a bug. So there I am, hanging out with God, trying to be chill, hoping God won't notice me. And slowly it occurs to me that squishing me like a bug is not on God's to-do list. I look at Sandy and I say, I feel so unworthy. For once, I'm not saying this with guilt or shame, just humility and awe. Sandy gives me a warm smile. I look at the bouquet of flowers on the table. I always bring flowers with me, both as a gift to Sandy and because looking at them in a heightened state is just so beautiful. Usually I buy them the morning of my session, but this time I bought them the night before. Some of the petals have already begun to droop. Some of the petals have already fallen to the floor. One day, I realize, one day, like these flowers, I will die. And I hear, just enjoy life, you fucking idiot, while you can. And if you feel unworthy, just remember, God doesn't care if you feel unworthy or not. You are a messenger of love and joy, and there is nothing to be scared of. God just wants me to be happy. I just need to accept that. I lie back and I'm bathed in God's love. It's like the unconditional love all of us want as infants and none of us ever completely gets. The mushrooms have started to wear off, but I'm not ready to leave yet. I ask Sandy, is it okay if I'm bathed in God's love a little longer? All you want, Sandy replies. 10 days later, I attend the wedding of two friends of mine in Pennsylvania. I'm still feeling kind of raw, and although I have a lovely time, well, you know how weddings can bring up feelings. At the end of the night, back in my hotel room, lying in my bed, I'm feeling kind of lonely. So I say, hold me, God. And I hear, God damn it, hold yourself, you're fine. Apparently my God likes to swear. A few nights later, on my living room couch, I'm feeling lonely again. So I say, hold me, God. I expect the same response, but I hear, relax, lie down, let me comfort you. I think the reason we need to say prayers more than once is because there's more than one right answer. Now, for those of you who want to know how this story ends, so do I. I'm aware I could have 1,000,000 more sessions under the influence, and they won't be enough if I don't make changes in my actual life. Insight is useless unless it inspires action. With the help of a therapist who's been very supportive of my journey, I'm working to integrate the wisdom I've received with the challenge of daily living. And I've joined an offbeat Jewish synagogue, one that feels more focused on connecting to the divine than on being a good Jewish boy. And I go to services semi-religiously. Certain prayers bring me to tears, even though they're in Hebrew, so I'm really not sure what they mean. When I began this journey, I hoped that on the other side of torment would be a depth of bliss like I had that time leading up to my appendectomy. After one session, I spent the next few days feeling not only happy and blissful, but also sad, lonely, angry, hateful, guarded, suspicious, resistant, discouraged, and just plain tense. But very little shame about these feelings. It's like I finally get, oh, this is what it's like to be human. This is the supermarket of human feelings. Perhaps the other side of torment isn't bliss. Perhaps it's just the ability to make room for everything. And with that space comes increasing grace. I still ache at times, sometimes a lot, but sometimes I can relax into it. And after a few minutes, the ache dissolves and life feels profoundly okay. The price of not aching is sometimes I'm much more in touch with my primal wounds, fear and loneliness, that the ache protected me from feeling. I still have my good days and bad days. I am at best life size. I've had one more session with Sandy, which felt like a refresher course in all I've learned. And I've had a few more journeys on ayahuasca. I don't know how many journeys I'll take. I just know, well, I'd hate to take one less trip than I need. Neither psilocybin nor MDMA have been panaceas, nor do I expect them to be. But they've been profound teachers and healers, opening my heart, providing me wisdom, and helping me see more clearly. I can settle for that. Besides, it's a beautiful wound. It reminds me I'm human and not an idea. I have no tidy ending. my journey continues. But I'll leave you with this. To all of you who struggle to give up struggling, to all of you who feel painfully aware of the gap between how beautiful life can be and the limits of how we experience it, to everyone who tries to hold themselves together because it's so painful to feel broken, all I can say is, I know. I know.